Hi and welcome back to Bill's Cichlid Room. If you haven't already, please do hit the subscribe button, click the like button, the notification button if you want to know when next time we put a video up. Well, today we're going to carry on with part 2 of Bill's Cichlid Room back in 2007 and have a look at the fish that I was keeping back then. Well, on to part 2 of Bill's Cichlid Room 15 years ago from July 2007. Well, in this tank I had a group of the Cupido, which I was trying to breed at the time. So I think there was a group of 6 I had. Really beautiful fish, and I never was successful in breeding them, but did enjoy keeping them. So yeah, they're not an aggressive cichlid at all. Like really nice to keep. In fact, I'd love another group of them now. You know, you can see in the reflection one of the heaters that I used. Yeah, so this was a little tank that was set up by itself, so that wasn't on the centralized system. So onto this tank. So this looks like more rainbow cichlids grow outs. Probably a few other little species as well in there. As I say, with the rainbow cichlids, I used to do really well with them. I used to sell them round all the local shops, all the local maidenheads. So yeah, it got to the stage where they actually used to ring me up to see whether I had any more for sale. They used to sell that fast, because with them being F1s, they did really colour up and go like a real nice golden yellow, pretty similar to the ones I've got now. Yeah, so also in this tank, if you look, there was a small group of the true parrot cichlid. So I was keeping those for a while. What I used to do actually, this is the second system. So I used to keep the water in this system at a lower pH. So the pH in this system was probably about 6.5, 6.8. So I used to put all my Central Americans in this system. And the system that we had a look at in part 1, if you haven't already seen it, if you go and have a look. So that was mainly for the Central American cichlids, so the pH in that one used to be a bit higher, so it was between 7 and 7.5. So I just used to keep the pH high. I used to put loads of like coral and crust up shells in the sump. So the parrot cichlid, so if you've watched Big Fish Lad's video from the auction a couple of weeks ago, he's just got a cracking pair. Pity, I should have gone for them myself, to be honest. Yeah, so again, feeding them the same stuff. So this is the chopped up mussels and cockles and prawns with a bit of bloodworm in it and a bit of mysis. So as I say, like there used to be a local like frozen food place, so you used to be able to buy the bags, like big bags of it, and it was really cheap, a lot cheaper than getting it from the shops. So in this tank I had the rock keel severum, which were quite new to the hobby at the time, and there was the redhead tapirjas, which again were quite new to the hobby. In fact, with the redhead tapirjas, I've told this story before on one of the videos. I actually found them in a local shop. They were in a group of the Geophagus syrimensis, but I just read an article in the Practical Fish Keeper about them, and I noticed that they weren't the same as the syrimensis, the patterns in the tail. So I actually managed to pick out a pair of them by chance, a male and female, brought them home, put them in a small tank, and they were breeding within there a couple of weeks. So I may have been the first one in the UK to breed the redhead tapirjas. So yeah, I had loads to fry off them and spread them around the hobby. So in this tank, this was the grow outs of the Nicaraguense. So again, in part 1 I showed the females. It was an F1 pair of the Nicaraguense, and they used to breed for me quite regularly. So this was the grow out tank. So because they were on the centralised system, I was always worried about oxygen getting into the tank. So I used to put air stones in the tanks that had a lot of fish in, just to aerate the water and make sure that they had a load of oxygen. So these ones, as you can see, there's quite a few of them in there. These are just feeding on flake food. So yeah, there was a fair few. There's probably about 150 in this these grow outs. So again, like for a couple of years, I think if anyone bought any Nicaragua Gwents around about 2007 in the northwest, they were probably from these. So these ones are a bit unusual. These aren't cichlids. So I used to be a member of, well, I still am a member of quite a few clubs. So in the Liverpool Aquarius Society and the Preston Aquarist Society, they used to do, what they still do breeding programs. So I was working through all the different grades. So what you had to do is you had to breed different types of fish. So obviously the cichlids were no problem for me, but you had to breed like tetras, gouramis, like live bearers, and you got points for them. So these are all the ones that I used to buy to actually breed to get the points. So when you've bred them, like what you do with them. So I actually had this tank that had quite a collection in there. So the pale gourami, I successfully bred those, which was quite interesting, with them being nest builders, bubble nest builders. Quite a few tetras in here I'd bred. Some of the goodies, which obviously are on the cares list now. So I did really well breeding all those. So this tank, so this is the what we did call the Freda Starlight and the Bow Corti, and it's the Via Melanoris and Aspera Argenta. So yeah, this was a tank, so it was like an oddball tank. It was stuff that like I only had like one of. I'd probably had a pair at one time, and like unfortunately like that lost the female or the male, and obviously the Argenta was just a spare one. So it's, you know, what you do with them. So yeah, I used to put them in this fish and just keep them. And in this tank, so this was like again South American cichlids. So I had the Yowaru in here, the Yowaru Ferdinand Lezepi, and there was a pair of wild angels that I was breeding at the time. So again, but with these ones, it's the flake food. But yeah, the Yowaru Ferdinand Lezepi, I actually had a problem with these at this time. They had all pits in the head, which I believe is from water quality, but everything else in the fish room was doing fine. It was on a centralized system. So yeah, it might have just been because they were wild ones, and yeah, I was struggling a little bit with them. And Stairby, Corridor Stairby. So again, I had those, used to breed those for the breeding programs, and then take them around the shops and the auctions. Yeah, cichlids, you don't get any joy with plants. So this was a silk plant that that I had for quite a while. Believe it or not, the Yowaru's actually chewed it up in the end. Yeah, but this was quite a chilled out tank with the more peaceful South American cichlids. So yeah, I used to really enjoy this tank. Yeah, you can see the pits in the Yowaru's head, in the Ferdinand Lezepi's head. And the normal Yowaru, the triangle cichlid, thinking it was the boss of the tank. The angel fish, the Scalari, they were really nice, those. The wild ones, but I find them much nicer than all the coloured ones. Same with discus as well. Yeah, so here's a view of the Cichlid Room 15 years ago. As you can see, exactly the same as what it is now. Well, that's it for part 2 of Bill's Cichlid Room back in 2007. It's quite interesting that the number of fish that I was keeping back then, and I'm actually keeping again now. So the old habits die hard. But anyway, we'll conclude the next video, which will be part 3. So see you all in a couple of days.